2013, the Boston Marathon bombing. It was a cold April day in 2013, one that promised both the excitement of a beloved tradition and the shadows of uncertainty. The Boston Marathon, an event that had been celebrated for more than a century, had become more than just a race. It was a symbol of endurance, hope, and community. Thousands of runners had gathered at the starting line, each with their own reasons for participating, but all of them connected by the same spirit of perseverance. Spectators filled the streets, cheering on the athletes, families lining up to see their loved ones cross the finish line, friends and strangers alike united in joy. For Martin Richard, an 8-year-old boy, it was just another day of watching the race with his family. He had been to the marathon before, sitting on the curb, waving flags and cheering for the runners. But this time, he was there with his parents and his younger sister, Henry, right at the finish line. They had come to celebrate his father's hard work in the race and the bond they shared as a family. For Martin, the day was meant to be full of joy, just like every other marathon day in Boston. At the same time, two brothers, Tamerlan and Djorkaeff Tsarnaev, were standing at the marathon's finish line, blending in with the crowd. They were there for a different reason, a reason that, at that moment, no one could have foreseen. The brothers had meticulously planned every detail, their hearts filled with hatred, but their faces masked by the anonymity the crowd provided. The race was nearing its end. The runners were pushing toward the finish line, giving everything they had left. The energy was electric, the air charged with the adrenaline of human determination. Families, friends, and strangers cheered loudly as the first few runners crossed the line. The end was near, and the festivities would soon shift to the aftermath of the race, celebrations, reunions, and stories of victory. But the Tsarnaev brothers had a different plan, one that would forever change the city, the marathon, and the lives of everyone present. The first bomb exploded at 2:49 p.m., just seconds after Martin Richard's family stepped away from the finish line to meet his father. The blast rocked the pavement, sending shockwaves through the crowd. The sound was deafening, a sharp, piercing noise that seemed to freeze time. For a moment, there was only confusion, then terror. Smoke billowed into the air, thick and suffocating, and the streets of Boston turned into chaos. Screams of panic mixed with cries for help as people scrambled to flee the explosion, only to find themselves stuck in the crowd. At that moment, Martin's life was tragically cut short. His body was severely injured by the blast, as was his younger sister Henry, who lay nearby. His mother, Denise, was knocked to the ground, but miraculously survived, her body bruised but her spirit shattered.
A second explosion followed just 13 seconds later, a brutal reminder that the violence was far from over. The blast echoed down the street, taking more lives and leaving countless others wounded. The Tsarnaev brothers had set off the bombs, packed with shrapnel, designed to cause maximum destruction. They wanted to strike fear into the heart of the city. They succeeded, but in ways they could not have imagined. The emergency response was immediate. First responders, already on high alert due to the marathon's nature, raced toward the chaos, their sirens adding to the cacophony of distress. Paramedics, police officers, and firefighters fought through the confusion, searching for survivors, securing the area, and evacuating the wounded. In the midst of the devastation, a young police officer, Sean Collier, was tragically shot and killed by the Tsarnaev brothers as they tried to flee the scene. He had been a familiar face to many of the runners, always seen around the campus of MIT, where he worked. As the hours passed, it became clear that the bombing was no random act of violence. The police quickly began searching for the perpetrators, scouring the city for clues. By that evening, the investigation had begun to take shape. Video footage from security cameras and cell phone recordings helped piece together the timeline. They soon identified Tamerlan and Djorkaeff Tsarnaev, brothers who had lived in the area for years, quietly planning their attack. The city was on edge, a sense of unease spreading through the streets, but hope never faltered. The days following the bombing were filled with uncertainty. The city went into lockdown as law enforcement searched for the suspects. Tamerlan and Djorkaeff had gone into hiding, but their plans were far from finished. They stole a car and held a hostage, making their way across the city. But their escape was short-lived. Tamerlan was eventually killed in a confrontation with the police, and Djorkaeff was captured after a dramatic standoff in a boat in a backyard in Watertown. In the aftermath, the impact of the bombing rippled through Boston and beyond. The survivors, the families of the victims, and the city itself had been irrevocably changed. Martin Richard's family, devastated by the loss of their young son, became symbols of resilience. They spoke out about peace, the importance of community, and the need to find hope in even the darkest moments. Denise Richard, although severely wounded, became an advocate for victims of terrorism, working tirelessly to make sure the lives lost would not be forgotten.
The healing process was long and difficult. For those who were there, the memories of the bombings would never fade. But Boston, a city known for its strength and its spirit, rose to the occasion. People came together, not just to mourn, but to rebuild, to demonstrate that terrorism could not break their resolve. The marathon would continue, and every year, there would be one more tribute to the lives lost and the lives saved. The Boston Marathon bombing wasn't just an act of terror. It was a moment that tested the strength of a city, the bonds of a community, and the resolve of people who refused to be defined by fear. It was a day that showed that even in the face of unimaginable pain, hope could still survive, and that love and resilience would always prevail over hate.